Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about foresight, the art and science of designing the future. We are interested in foresight since our first day on the earth. So humans are always curious about shaping the future, taking the lead in the future, and then being the innovators. And we see that actually this is becoming more and more important in recent years, that humans are becoming more curious, there are more technological improvements, more chances actually to develop some new opportunities for social and economic development, and we are more and more concerned about the future as a first step of innovation and developing our quality of lives. There have always been some exciting developments and opportunities for humans. So thinking about the future, designing futures, and taking the lead into the future, these are not new concepts. So these have been there since the beginning of the humanity. And in the recent years and even centuries, we have seen that there have been a number of opportunities which gave people some new perspectives and some new horizons to look into the future. If we look at the, for example, 17th century, we see that Francis Bacon was talking about printing, gunpowder, and the compass, which gave us great opportunities around that times when we started positioning ourselves in the world we lived in, which we couldn't do by that time. And then after that, we started seeing with the Industrial Revolution that new opportunities were coming. And then these machines actually made all sorts of products and services available for larger parts of the world. And we started seeing the emergence of cities, emergence of economic systems, labor class, and access to products and services with all of its pluses and at the same time minuses. And then we started seeing that production, after that knowledge, became a key engine of development. And then the ones actually who bring this knowledge into the scene, the entrepreneurs, were considered to be the main sources of development in the beginning of the 20th century. And later, as we moved to the 20th century, into the Second World War, for example, we started seeing that science and technology have become the major source of competitiveness for technological and social development. We have seen, particularly after the Second World War, that the countries which were taking lead in science and technology, particularly in defense technologies, for example, taking a great power in the world. And especially in a polarized world, and especially in a competition between the main main forces of development, like the United States and Russia, we see that actually there have been a lot of advancements in science and technology. And we see that now actually our key big question is what is the next? What is the next driver of change for the future? So that is actually our big question now. So if we find the answer to this question, then we can develop some new technologies and new innovations which may help us to move forward. What actually is appearing is that the new source of competitive power is human itself, which I will come back in a few minutes. So we started doing some systematic technological foresight exercise to look into the future, to shape the future, and to take the lead in the future. Because the ones actually who can design the future can innovate and can provide some new products and services, and that means that the others follow them. So if you would like to actually create the future, not to be the follower, then you need to innovate, and innovation lies into looking into the future and then designing the future and bringing all these innovative ideas in forms of some new products and services. We started seeing some systematic activities to do that. It was at the beginning like ad hoc, based on some ideas coming from different people or different organizations about the future. But later we started seeing that looking into the future was done as a kind of a systematic activity. So we started designing processes, developing methodologies, and using some kind of key drivers of change. These were sometimes science and technology, sometimes economy and society. We started seeing that these activities have been recognized widely by many countries, by many companies and organizations, and increasingly by many institutions, regions, and all the other actors involved in socioeconomic systems. They were told as technology forecasting activities, particularly after the Second World War. Countries were looking into the future to develop the best, for example, defense technologies to take the lead. So technology was used as a driver for developing the latest and most advanced defense technologies. And after that, we started seeing that as the World War started becoming way behind, and the economic systems again started to emerge, and then we started seeing that the main focus of technological development have been the economic success. So technology was seen as a key driver for bringing economic success, particularly in the 70s. And foresight became very popular in the 70s after the world experienced several oil shocks. For example, companies like Shell developed some scenarios, some future-oriented scenarios, which helped them actually to consider as an oil shock as one of the scenarios. Then we started seeing that we cannot actually predict the future. There are alternative futures. There are multiple futures we need to consider. First, foresight activities were in the type of forecasting about the predicting the future, but we started seeing that the future cannot be predicted because there are so many different factors, there are so many different drivers of change coming from economic systems, coming from technological systems, coming from different systems, which may affect the future, the way future unfolds. So this was the one of the key lessons actually that we learned in foresight, that there are uncertainties and we live in a complex world, so there are some alternative futures we need to think about. And the continued efforts in foresight then actually shaped this activity into different directions and into different futures. For example, when we come to the 80s, we see that the emergence of national innovation systems. The idea of national innovation system emerged from the need to bring all different stakeholders in socioeconomic system together and to talk to each other and develop a common vision for the future. These actors were at the beginning like the industry, which are the main producers of products and services, research organizations where new ideas and new research come from, and the policymakers, which is responsible basically to regulate this sort of environment. There was a greater recognition that all these actors should become an innovation system and they should work together with each other. So new research and ideas emerge from research institutions, universities, academia, and then these are embodied into some artifacts or some services by the industry, and the government sometimes funds this research and sometimes regulate this environment and take a part in this process. So there's a recognition that all these actors should be synchronized and their efforts should go hand in hand together. So this brought the participative aspects of foresight process. Then later, we started seeing that actually we need to think about the future of not only about the technology and society, but also we need to think about the future of the environment. So we started seeing that there are some impacts of climate change, for example. This kind of temperature changes and then extreme climate conditions and the effects of human activities on climate change. So all this actually recognition of the kind of impacts of greater systems, greater wholes, and how human activities start affecting some kind of natural processes like the environmental processes, like the climate change. We started seeing that actually this system is actually bigger than what we thought, and then started focusing on this bigger system. So the scope of foresight activities has widened, and then foresight has been applied in all areas at all levels. Traditionally, these activities were started at the national levels. Then we started seeing that companies largely adapted foresight methodologies and foresight tools to look into the future, to understand the dynamics of change, and then to develop some new products and services, innovative products and services which help them to take the lead in these areas. Like all those, for example, mobile phones we are using today, the computer systems and all the electronics and others, actually developments in medicine and health, new energy technologies, these are all based on systematic foresight studies. So they are not actually coming by coincidence, they are coming by some innovators, by the actors who look into the future in a systematic way, who understand the dynamics of social change, environmental change, technological change, and bring about all these new ideas, and they are actually introduced into our lives. So we see that they are both making great profits in the world today because they use foresight, and at the same time bring a lot of new opportunities for us with the use of, for example, information and communication technologies. We can talk to each other, we can communicate with each other, our society can organize itself, and people are living longer and healthier now, and we are going into some kind of a cleaner world with the use of renewable and new energy sources. So the question today is actually not whether we should do foresight or not. We should do foresight. The question is how we should do it, because actually the world is changing, and the way we look into the future and understand the future is also changing in the same way. So as of today, our understanding of foresight is that this is the medium to long-term future-oriented analysis. So we look into the long-term future. The reason we look into the longer-term future is that because the change, making new things, developing new ideas, and putting these new ideas into practice take time. So if we look at, for example, health and medicine or electronics, all the gadgets we are using, these weren't developed in a matter of day or a month. It took actually several years or decades to come to the present state. So we need to really start from the earlier phases of research and development, then have necessary skills, then have necessary infrastructures, then start actually developing some R&D activities and new technologies, products, and markets. So it takes time to do all of this. And then if you look at all these activities you need to do, then you realize that the future is actually not too far. So if you don't start from today, tomorrow might already be late to start some innovation processes. The future we consider as multiple. We are seeing more and more factors actually in the form of some wildcards changing our world almost on a daily basis. Just yesterday we saw that actually there was a major cyber attack, for example, which affected 74 countries in the world in about 24 hours. Collapsed the national health system in the UK, for example, and major telecommunication company in Spain, and then so many other companies and so many other users at the individual and the corporate and national levels have been affected by this. So we are living in a very interconnected and interdependent world right now. So that is why there are so many factors. They are interacting with each other, and sometimes they give rise to expected and unexpected outcomes. And we need to understand actually what kind of outcomes may emerge. We are looking into the future and develop some future scenarios because we cannot predict the future simply. So there are a number of factors affecting our future development, and we cannot understand sometimes the dynamics of all of this, so we try to encapsulate all of this in some different scenarios and alternative scenarios. So this is also giving us some different perspectives and different outlooks about the future, because it may unfold into so many different directions. We see many cases like this. Again, the cyber attack example I gave. In the political arena, for example, there are some new movements. So we see, for example, people are desiring change, and this change is happening so fast, and we need to understand all these dynamics and then take some actions and develop some strategies for these alternative courses of development. And this process is participative, bringing all different actors and stakeholders together. Traditionally, these actors were the government or policymakers, industries, and universities. But actually, we see that the number of actors has been increasing. So we have all sorts of different social actors, all sorts of different financial institutions, all sorts of other innovators, small and medium-sized companies, and these are all becoming very active and coming into the play, and then they have a chance actually to change the world and to introduce some major innovations or major wildcards into our system, which may change the whole thing. So we need to engage with all these different groups in our foresight processes and design a future together. So all of these actors have different expectations, different worldviews. What is important is to bring them together around a common platform so that they can talk to each other, they can learn from each other, they can develop some collective visions, and they can take some collective actions to make those visions happen. So we would like to synchronize all these efforts with each other. And we don't only design the future, we don't only think about the future and develop some scenarios for the future and leave it there. We need to do something about it. We need to start action. And action needs to be started from today. If you look at, again, the steps of developing a new product, a new service, or a new market, it's a very lengthy process, actually. So we need to plan this process and develop some strategies, some roadmaps. So we need to connect the future with the present and think about long-term, medium-term, and short-term strategies, and then follow this kind of roadmaps to make sure that we can achieve our vision in the longer-term future. And again, this requires not only developing strategies, but also mobilizing different actors. All the actors actually need to play their part. Research institutions need to do their research. Scientists need to produce their new ideas, concepts, theories, and knowledge. And then these need to be put into practice by industry, by large, small, and medium-sized organizations. And this environment needs to be regulated by the government, by the policymakers, and all the social actors should be included in this process, both on the demand side and also on the supply side. Sometimes innovations come from the society itself, so we need to observe this trend very carefully. So these are the things which characterize today's foresight: thinking about the future, alternative scenarios, developing visions and priorities, and then translating them into strategies and acting from today as the key features of foresight. And again, foresight is important. Foresight is important because we don't have endless resources today. We have limited time, we have limited skills, we have limited funds. So we need to actually make use of all these limited resources as wisely as possible.